Hi, good morning, Joe here over at woollycottage.com. It's Back to Basics episode 12. I thought I'd do something a little bit different this week for one of my videos. A couple of weeks ago, this is a pre-recorded video that you'll see next. I was washing some fleeces up and some mohair and the Appaloosa alpaca that I managed to source this summer. So I was washing those, so I thought it'll be a good chance for you. I have got these videos down on my timeline of washing fleeces and things like that, because I do get asked about it a lot. Go scroll and you'll find them. But I thought, well, since I'm doing these back to basics, I will approach on this subject now, before I even start to attempt on introducing you into a little bit of dyeing and then carding and blending and the different techniques, just in case you want to use your own fleeces and stuff like that. I do have videos in there as well about how I card fleeces that I haven't dyed, but they've come, I've washed them and everything else, and I card them so that I can use them as a back form. So there are on my timeline. I will approach onto that subject again, but I have done quite a few of those, but I will include one in this back to basics video sessions. Okay, so so you'll see me washing my fleeces and my fibres in the sink. Now you can use buckets. Get yourself a couple of, if you're in the UK, B&Q, those big bright orange buckets that are about £1.50 or something like now. Grab yourself 2 of those really cheap ones, and you can use those for washing, so that when you've got one soaking in your water, you've got the other one ready for your fresh water, so you can swap them over, because really you want to keep them at the same temperature all the time to avoid any type of felting. And mostly it's because of the lanolin and the dirt that sits inside the water. It'll just redeposit itself back onto the fibre. And it could just sometimes, especially if it's a really greasy fleece, it will take a good few washes to get that going. So grab yourself a couple of buckets, or alternatively, in the UK we use basins in the sink. I don't personally. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but you can use washing basins as well, as an alternative. And I would definitely advise to do it in small amounts, especially some fleeces could be something like 4.5 kilos large, and literally if you were to roll that out on the floor once you've taken out the bag, it will cover half your living room. So yeah, I would definitely advise you to make it into sections and wash them a couple 100 grams at a time. You don't have to weigh them out, because once all that lanolin, the dirt's come out, 200 grams can end up being about 150 grams of fibre. So just get yourself some nice healthy weights. Alternatively, you can use washing laundry bags, you know, what you put all your silks and things like that in. Get yourself a couple of decent sized ones and stick in a couple 100 grams and use those for your buckets and your basins, so it's easier to transfer them from one to the other. Okay, just a couple of tips before you get started. Right, so I'll catch you at the end of these videos. I hope you enjoy these, and it's useful for you in the future, if not now. If it's this time of the year where people are tempted to buy fleeces but not quite sure where to go, especially if you're falling down the rabbit hole recently and it's something you haven't attempted before. For you oldies, if you've got any other tips that I haven't mentioned, drop them in the comments below. We've all done it. I do it more on a commercial basis, in the sense that I'm not doing it for myself, I'm doing it for everybody else. So I've got my methods of doing things, and I've got time limited as to how much time I can spend doing it. I don't generally wash a lot of fleeces for myself. No, I don't actually. Anyway, I'll catch you at the end, and I'll show you what my fibres look like. Some of them have been dyed up already. Some of them are actually sold before I even have a chance to get this video up here. But I'm sure I've got some mohair locks still around, and I've got the Appaloosa over behind me. So I'll catch you at the end of this. Enjoy. Catch you in a bit. Hi, Future Joe here, or Historic Joe here, woollycottage.com. I thought I would do something a little bit different for the Back to Basics videos today. It's got to that time of year where farmers and breeders are all starting to shear, or have been for a little while, a couple of months maybe, depending on where they are in the country, as to how close to shearing the sheep need doing, because it varies from county to county throughout the country, depending on when they were last sheared, when they were born as well as another factor. If they were born in the late spring, then it could be later in the season before they need shearing the following year. Depending on the breed, you might want longer locks, so you make sure that lock, you get the full potential from the locks. There's loads of other factors that I'm not quite sure of, but I will get the information from my local breeder and see what she does as to the fact that she needs the beneficial moments when she feels it's time to start shearing her sheep. Anyway, there are multiple reasons as to why you shear a sheep, and there are a lot of people from a specific eating proliferation, shall we go for, that don't believe that it's healthy or good for the creature for shearing. Now, there are health reasons as to why. For hundreds and hundreds of years, we bred our sheep to have really big, fluffy coats, fleeces of fibre, because we were one of the largest wool producers in the world, well, in Europe. And that's dwindled over the last 50, 60 years. We no longer are. I think it's generally down to New Zealand and Australia and other countries as well, but those are two of the main factors. Wools that are sheared in this country go to what we have as the wool boards. Now, there are wool boards all over the world. Ours really don't benefit the farmers at all. You're looking at, I think, approximately, well, last year it was 19.6 pence per kilo, and that didn't matter whether you had a top quality breed or not. It didn't matter whether it was a Shetland or if it was a Teeswater. It literally went on the locks, on the weight of the fleece. So yeah, you're talking a farmer's spending £10 per sheep to a shearer to cut that fleece off that sheep. Now, there is a reason as to why we have to shear them. Some sheep are bred in such a way that they will cast their fleece off because they're just meat sheep. I say just, but they are predominantly used for meat. Shearing sheep is to prevent them from getting ill. There is a fly that will lay its eggs around the tail ends of a sheep, and there are pictures you can find. They are very gruesome and it's very cruel, and these eggs and the maggots from the flies will eat this poor beast inside out. So there are reasons as to why. It's not cruel, it's not going to hurt them. There are times when there are the odd accidents when a shearer may be inexperienced or the sheep just doesn't want to stay still, where they may get a snag. But those things are they are remedied and they are fixed there and then on site. There's professional shearing competitions, and I know for a fact, and I've seen the posts on different social media platforms of the shearers are in desperate need. They really, really do need them out there and being trained to shear the sheep, because we're still a sheep dominated nation, but a lot of our meat is actually exported out of the country now. Our wools are predominantly exported to countries like Portugal, where they will process the wool and they will weave with it and then sell that product back to us in the UK. So yeah, it is really, really important. Farmers are not treated in the same way or given the same respect as what they used to be 50, 60 years ago. So yeah, but there are numerous mills starting over the last recent years to come into public use again, privately run by small families that have either come from that sort of farming community backgrounds or just something that we're really, really interested in and very, very passionate about. And I met a couple of people over the weekend at the Cumbria Wool Fest. A lady called Smythe's down in Nottinghamshire, and I'm getting in touch with her to get some more information from her. I'm hoping to do some sort of video, maybe joint chat on one of my live chats. You can fire some questions at her. So yeah, that's for a future project later down the line. So I thought I would do washing fleece today. I have got a batch of blue-faced Leicester from my breeder, from my supplier, Secret Small Holding Farms, Hayley Steele, down in Wales. And she's the only person I'll get my fleeces from. Now, she sent me I was due an order, but she sent me this one, a little bit of a discounted price, because she wanted me to check it out, because she's found that it's actually a little bit more greasier and a bit heavier than she would normally like, or what she normally sees from her sheep. And she asked me to give it a go, tell her what I thought of it, and so it reflects on her price when she's selling it on the platforms online on Facebook, which is where she does it, because you've got Spinners UK, There's another one as well that's about farmers, but it's predominantly that they're encouraging farmers. And then there's the Greasy Fleece Marketplace on Facebook as well, where you can source that. There is the Wool Fleece Directory. You can find them online, and there's a lot of breeders on there that are selling directly from that supply chain, and it's free for them to use that platform, and you can just contact them via that with pictures and stuff like that. Anyway, so she was a bit concerned about the quality of her fleece this year. Now I've pulled it out. I'm quite happy with it. I think it's okay. It does feel a little bit heavier than usual, and as I say, she was concerned about it. When I was at the Cumbria Wool Gathering the other week, I was talking to a breeder there, a sheep farmer from Wales again, and I asked him what he thought about the quality of the fleeces that he was getting from his breeds, because he had different types of breeds of sheep on his farm, on his land. Cotswold, Shetland, Hebrideans, Welsh Mountains, a mixture of different types of wools. And he said that he's finding the same thing, because this year in the UK, especially along the west coast where I am. I'm on the west coast, North Cumbria, west coast of Cumbria. I'm right on the coast of the water. I'm a couple of minute walk away from, looking over to the Irish Sea, the Isle of Man, and over to Scotland. So that's literally how close I am. But they've noticed it as well, all the way up through Wales, up our way. We're on the same coastline. That we've had a really, really long winter and hardly any sign of any type of proper spring. Everything's been late blooming this year, and it's been the exact same with the sheep as well. The quality of fleece is just not quite as the standard that these breeders are finding. He said that he's definitely noticed that his sheep fleeces are a bit more covered in lanolin and a lot heavier to the field once it's been sheared off. But it doesn't stop. It just means you've got a little bit of extra work to do. Okay, so what I'm doing, I'm going to show you two different ways that I wash my fleece. One way I don't do that often, and when I do, I only do it in small batches. I've also got some mohair, goat mohair locks, and I have got Appaloosa fleece from an alpaca. So I thought, well, I'll show you how I process all of these. They're very, very, very similar to doing it this way. And I literally just do it in the sink, okay? So there we go. So this is on its second wash. Now, when I first I fill up the sink. I'm very, very fortunate. I've got a really big sink, but I am technically what they call a small batch dyer. So because my studio is home based and I haven't got a big warehouse where I can process stuff in vast quantities, I literally get a kilo, just for talk's sake, a kilo of fleece of this BFL locks from my supplier, and I will wash about 250 grams of it at any one time. It means it's a small manageable amount for me to be able to wash, dry and dye, and then that's easy for me to store away as well. And it means that I'm not dyeing big quantities of the same colours on my website, because they just sit there and I end up reducing them down 3 months, 6 months down the line, because I've just got so much of the one colourway left. So I just do small batches. There's about 400 or 500 grams in here, because I have got a couple of colour ideas that I want to do today once these are all washed. So what I do is I fill my sink up with just water, okay, just plain water. That is it. And I do it about hand hot, around about 60 degrees, roughly is what your boiler's set to anyway. So I just fill the sink up with water, put the fleece in there and leave it for about 15-20 minutes till the water starts to cool down. What that I find helps do is, because the fleece has been sat there and it's all dried up, all the lanolin and the dirt that's in the fibres will start to stick together, okay? And it'll become a little bit more crusty. All right, and a bit toughened at the ends. So I find that if I put it just in the hot water and leave it there for about 15-20 minutes, it'll help start that process off, to start softening down the dirt first. Okay, so this is the second wash anyway. So I'll do that, and then I'll empty the sink out. I'll push all my wool up to one side. I'll empty the sink out, and then I'll fill it back up with fresh water. And then once it's filled up with fresh water, I will add in a little bit of detergent, just literally a squish full. So that's why I've not got a lot of suds in there. I like to use personally E-Cover detergent, but you can use any. You can use supermarket brands, Fairy, all the ones that are out there. I'm very quite fussy about which ones I use. So yeah, and I'm not bothered about messing around with it in the sink too much. I don't find it felt, but I'll literally just leave it there. A bit of touching, it's not going to do it any harm whatsoever. So that's next stage now, that I need to empty out the sink. So I'm just going to push it over to one side, and I'm just going to pull my plug out without getting the cardigan wet. And I'll actually just grab my bits, pull them over to one side, and let that just drain off. And I will do this because it's quite a dirty fleece. Usually I would only do the plain water, then I would do 2 detergent waters, and then I'll do a plain water rinse at the end. You want the water to get to a point where it's hardly got any colour in it and it's practically clear. Okay, you could do the Suinip method. The Suinip method, you want to get yourself a black bin, or one that doesn't let any light in. You can buy them off of online shops. You can buy them from online shops with a lid on the top of it, and like a lever clamp. I've got one at the back of the garden, a lever clamp at the end of it, and then fill it up, take the lid off, and when you know there's some rain coming, you want to collect as much rainwater as possible. If you're doing it through the summer months and you've not managed to get much rain, which is obviously the point sometimes of the summer, is not much water, fill it up with your tap water and leave it for about 24 to 48 hours. And what you're doing is letting the chlorinated water that we're drinking with the fluoride and everything else, all those chemicals that is put in the treatment for us to drink, will disperse and settle, and it won't affect the wool. Then you want to put your fleece inside there, put the lid on the top of it, and leave it for a week. Leave it for a week, don't touch it, don't mess with it. And then after a week, take the lid off of it and have a look at it and see how much of the dirt is starting to fall off. It's a process. So you might want to put the lid back on there if it's still, especially if it feels like there's still lanolin in the fibre, if it was quite greasy. Put the lid back on it, leave it for another week. Give it a quick check in another week's time. Generally, they say about 2 to 3 weeks is the best for it. And then once you've done that, tip it out the water, or at least pull out the fleece, and then you're more or less good to go. I would give it a quick rinse over with a hose, and then that's it, it's fine, and then you can do what you want with it. The water, put onto your plants. Get your watering can. We're in a dry spell, there's hose pipe bands everywhere. Just use the water on your plants out in the garden. Your plants will lap it up. Okay, so that's my point now. So I'm just going to turn my water back on. I'm just going to give it a gentle squeeze, trying to push some of that dirt out. Well, I'm just waiting for the sink to fill. There we go. Rinse out the sink, make sure there's no big pieces of dirt in there, and then push the plug down and let that just run. And that's it really. I will do this. I've done it once, so I'll probably do this another 3 times. It's definitely not the best fleece that I've had, but she was a little bit concerned. I'm just hoping that when I dye it later on, it won't look as bad. But these are the most gorgeous locks usually. Usually I only need to give them 1 or 2 rinses through. But you can see the dirt still coming out of that if I just give that a little swish. You want to make sure that there's enough water in your sink for movement. So for it to float around and not be too much in the sink that it all squashes up together. But yeah, that once it's been shushed around a little bit, it's definitely loosening up. There we go. So the water's going to fill up there, and I'll add in a squish in a second. So the alternative method is this one. So I've got about 5 litres of water in my big stock pot. This is my big dye pot, okay? So I'm not using something like my kitchen. This is something that's dedicated just to my business, okay? So there you go, 1 plain hot water. I've already filled up hot water. I've turned on that. I'm just wanting it to start to just gently simmer. But what I'm going to do before I get to that point is, this is the fleece that I was given. And now to you, it's really, really clean. In comparison to the fleeces that I usually get, this is a little bit dirtier than my usual. But not massively, but I can feel that there's a slight weight difference. So I'm literally just going to plonk that in there. There's about, once all the grease is washed off that, I would say that there'll be about 150 grams of fleece in there. Now I'm going to go and get my, excuse the state of my floor, everybody, my detergent. So I've pulled out the the Colonel of the Army, the old bottle of you-know-what, and put that in there. And I've got my tongs, and I'm just going to dunk them down. There's not a lot of detergent in there, but the enzymes will help break down that dirt. And I'm doing this method to see if it makes a difference with these locks, with them being at the slightly heavier side of pretty locks. See, and then you can compare the difference yourself once I've put them through the rinse after this. But I will do this for about 15-20 minutes. The water will really start to cloud up. The house will start to smell of lanolin and dirt. But yeah, so I will literally just see the water's already starting to react. It's in a hot water pot there, and I'm just going to wait for it to start to simmer. As soon as it starts to simmer, I'm going to turn the heat right down and leave that for about 20 minutes. So this is still the BFL in the sink. I am on my 4th wash. So plain water, 2 detergent sinkfuls of water, and now this is my last plain water, and this is what I essentially would call my rinse off. And what I want is the water to be, that's still probably wanting another wash, but I want it to be translucent at least, for me, because I'm going to dye these straight afterwards anyway. I very rarely, unless it's for a custom order, do natural locks. I always dye them. So this stage I'm at now is still cloudy, so another one of these plain water washes, and that'll be it after this one. As for the pot, you can see that we come back a bit. You can see that the water isn't boiling. It's on a it's on a small ring on a very low heat, and it's looking fantastic. It's looking actually slightly better than the one in the sink, believe it or not. So once that gets rinsed off, all those parts of locks that had the really thick pieces of dirt that was stuck into it, they have completely loosened off, and you will see the difference. And I quite like doing this way because it's quicker. What I don't like about it, the cons, is the smell in the house. You can smell it as soon as you walk down the stairs. If you've got a camping cooker, there's nothing stopping you from doing that outside in the garden, or in your backyard or whatever, which is easier for you. Or if you're in a flat, do it out on your veranda if you've got a balcony, and stick your camping cooker on and do it that way. Then your flat won't smell of anything. But yeah, this is a good way. And once this is done, I'm just turning off the heat now. It's been in there for about 20 minutes. I'm letting the water just cool right down, and then once this other lot over here in the sink have been rinsed one more time, then I will rinse this off in the sink, and I will show you the difference in the two of them. So there we go. Right, this one here is the fleece end that I washed in the sink 5 times. It went through. It's really quite white. It's brought out the colours, but I'm still finding sections like this where there's still a little bit of mud or dirt or whatever it is that's in there, but I don't worry about that too much at this stage for me personally, because it gets dyed now, because it's still wet. It's gone through my dry spinner just to get the excess water out of it, just so you can see what it looks like, but it's really, really white. This one here is the one that I did in the pan, but I'm not seeing as many dirty sections stuck in the fibres as what I'm having in the other. And the difference is as well, this one, see the colour difference? This one's got a yellowy creamy look to it still, and this one has got more of a whiter look to the fibres. But this one's come out a lot cleaner because I did that simmer effect in the pot with a more consistent heat, and it has loosened up those dirt particles a lot more in comparison to that one. I did put this through the sink, and I gave it a quick 10-minute soak in a little bit more soapy detergent just to rinse off the residue from the pot, because it was sat there in its own dirty water. And then I rinsed it off once, and this is exactly how it's come out. So yeah, my advice to you, if you've got a really dirty ended fleece with lots of dirt trapped in there and it doesn't look like it's going to come out, I would definitely advise do a pot method. Don't do a lot, do enough just to see how it goes. Or if you've got a big batch like this one was, because I've got a pot full of it, this is only a small sample of it, but split your one that you washed down if you're finding that the ends aren't coming up really clean as much as you want to, especially if you want to do it straight to the spin section, spin it straight off after washing. But yeah, there you go. So going a bit closer and you can see some of those areas still with the dirt just trapped in those fibres, still a little bit too much. Okay, but as I say, once I dye that in the tray, that will definitely soften off a lot more and you won't even notice it anymore. But this one's perfect for spinning straight off from the go once it's all dried off. There's no lanolin in it. It's really clean. It's come up really lovely. And then just one quick wash in the sink and then a rinse off in the sink, and it's come up absolutely brilliantly. So yeah, this was perfect if you want to dye in the sink. I mean, you could mess around with the tips of them and try and loosen off the fibres of dirt that's inside the locks, but I think this is probably the better option. And plus, anyway, at the end of the day, once it's all dried and you're carding it and you're spinning it off, excuse the noise, this builder's still next door. I'm trying to shut this door over. Once you're spinning it off, all those particles are dried off anyway, and they'll just come off as dust. So it's not a massive big problem. But when it comes to the two comparison, you can see the colours are completely different in the effect. This one's had 2 washes in detergent, or 2 washes in detergent and 5 hot water washes. This one's had 20 minutes in a hot water pot with a steady consistent heat, and then it's been in the sink, wash all the dirt and the stock water off from the pot, and then washed it in a detergent and then rinsed it in a clear water, and then that's that done. So now I'm off to go and do the alpaca. Okay, so this is a alpaca fleece that I ordered from a breeder on a Facebook group last week. That's the length of them. So these fibres are really quite long compared to what I'm used to getting. So there is a lock there. Look how, I mean, honestly, it's so soft and fluffy. I really want to be quite careful what I do with this and how I wash it, okay? Because it's very flighty. It's like cotton wool. I've never felt an alpaca coat so beautiful. This is an alpaca coat that I got a few months back, and it's literally about 1 inch long. Not very good when it's been sheared. It's been sheared either too early or it's been sheared twice in one season. Still really soft, a lovely quality alpaca, but you can see the locks are barely longer than the length of my finger. So they're only about, what, 1.5 inches long, which is not brilliant if you're wanting to card it. Especially if you want a lovely fibre for spinning with. That'll end up lots of halo in it. This one, I can't imagine having a lot of halo. The length of it, longer than my thumb, from my knuckle to the joint. So I would say it's a good 3 inches long, at least in parts. In other parts, it's longer. Really soft. Look at that, little clumps coming out there. Really divine. Now, with an alpaca, it does felt. Okay, it's a brilliant fibre for felting with. Wet felting, needle felting, that sort of thing. Absolutely delightful to work with. Look at that. Look at that. How could you not love that? It's just so soft. It's got a really gorgeous glossy sheen on it as well. Can you see that light off there? Yeah. So I've got 2 kilos to process of this. Some of this will be making its way onto the shop. And I might actually do a pack of the mixed one. This is an Appaloosa alpaca. It's still a short-haired alpaca. It's got bits of grain in there and a bit of grass and everything else. I'm not bothered about that at all because it will be getting carded later on. Appaloosa alpaca, you've probably heard of an Appaloosa horse, and they're the ones that have this spotted two-toned fleece. So they have spots of darker fleece or spots of lighter fleece. There could be a tan alpaca with white spots all over it, like a leopard print. And that's what they look like. So that's why they're called Appaloosa. It's the same sort of style and design, naturally created from the pigment on the animal's skin. A bit like when you see a dog or a Dalmatian where they've got the white body but black spots. It's the same. And when you look underneath the fur, they've got the black spots on their skin. Exactly the same effect with the alpaca and the horses, and hence the name Appaloosa. Okay, so I'm going to go and get this in the sink. If my dogs will just move out my way. Oh, it's so fluffy. It's just sticking to my towel. And we're going to take it through to the kitchen and plonk it in the sink. Now, the sink, I have just put in plain water. Nothing else with it, because it's just dirt that's on this. They don't have lanolin on them at all. Hypoallergenic. Alpacas and llamas, they're hypoallergenic. Great for people that are not allergic, because no one's allergic to wool, but sensitive to wool. Is a great resource to use for jumpers for people like that have an irritation to the fibres on wool. So I'm just literally going to push it down into the water and let it soak in there for a bit. Now, it's a lukewarm water that I'm using for soaking this. I'm not using a hot water because I really don't want it to felt. I'm not going to give it any type of agitation, and I will give it 2 rinses. I will do this one in the warm water, and because I'm going to use it for carding with at a later date and then spin it up, which will be in one of my further next videos when we start dealing with spinning up fibres from being carded. I'm just going to let that sit in there, and that dirt and dust, well, it's not even dirt, it's just dust. If I could give that a shuggle, and there's barely coloured in the water. Okay, so I just want to loosen that dirt off in that coat and stick it in there. Make sure it gets well saturated, and I'm going to leave that for about 15-20 minutes, and then I'm going to come back and give it a second rinse once all that dirt and dust has loosened itself. Okay, so this is now the third. This is just a rinse that I'm doing now. I've added half a capful of fabric conditioner because this one will stay natural, and I'll put a sample of these on the website depending on how much I've got here. But now that it's starting to open up and it's not all pulled together like it's just come off the animal, I can now spot the little areas with the grass in, and I can literally just pull them out while they're in the sink if I can. It's quite hard doing this when you're not actually watching it, what you're doing. So you're seeing bits of grass coming out of the actual fibres, and you can grab them because they're a lot looser now, easier to pick out. You haven't got anything holding on to them. There we go. So that's another piece. That's a bit of leaf. That's all that is. I'll get it off my finger. I'm just going to let this sit in the sink for a few minutes, and then I will gently, I can feel a piece under there. There's another bit there. There's a little piece of straw, and that just comes straight out. So this is the bit that I just have a little look through, little rootle, just ever so gingerly swish it around, see if any little VM matter comes up out of it. But I'm really pleased at how actually clean this fibre is. I have bought alpaca in the past and it's been absolutely riddled with VM. I'm yet to find the colour parts of this fibre, but I am going to wash a lot more. I've got 2 kilos of this alpaca coat, so half of it will be for myself, and then I'm going to spin it all up and then dye it, and I will do that in a future video, dyeing your hand spun wools. But there we go, so that's that done. I'm going to leave that for a few minutes. I'm going to stop playing with it. There's another piece of VM there. I'm going to stop playing with it, and I'm going to get my bundles all ready for the next watch for my mohair. Okay, so here we go again. Another fibre to wash today. This is goat mohair. and it's in these most gorgeous long locks. Well, I say long locks. These ones are averaging between 3 and maybe 5 centimetres. Some are only an inch long, depending on where they've come from on the animal. But I wanted to try and keep them in the form, so I've just tied up some of my spare yarn, and I've got hot water, and I have put in detergent this time, so I'm just going to let them sit in the water. Hopefully they can keep their lock shape. I don't want to lose it too much on these ones, because these ones I want to dye and see how they come out. So I've got these little bundles. They're probably about, I don't know, feel like why they're dirty, about 25 grams on each little bundle. There we go. Just give them a little push down. The water's relatively hot, like I would do if I was washing a fleece, but I'm not going to mess with these too much. I'm just going to leave them to soak in the water, submerge them down a little bit more, get my tongs, and leave them for about 20 minutes, and then I'll go through the whole scenario again, and I'll catch you at the end once they've been taken out. Hi, so I hope you found that useful, a bit more in depth with the way that I actually do things, and doing the pot one was a really good idea. It's something I do now and again, because as I say, sometimes I get my Teeswater locks and my Wensleydale locks and they're just absolutely filthy, and it takes me a while to get them sorted. So I discovered that doing it in a pot first off before I do anything else is a really great way to getting rid of that stubborn dirt in those lock tips. So this is the result of the mohair locks. So I dyed them in pastel neons, and look at the length of those, really long, really lovely. So I've actually got, I think, one more pack of these left on the website, but I will get some more dyed up over the next week, so I'm taking a bit of a break back at the moment while I get Christmas advents and batty clubs out the way. This is the results after washing and then dyeing them, the blue face Leicester curls that I get from a breeder. I've got loads of these on the website at the moment. I've got these on Wensleydales as well, local Wensleydales, and Cotswold BFL cross locks, and they just literally, they pull apart. They are really, really lovely. I do have some big grab bags from the fleece that I dyed on the day. Some of them weren't brilliant, but they're absolutely ideal for felters and that sort of crafts as well. If you want those, the big bumper packs of I think roughly about 100 grams maybe on some of them, for a discounted price than what I would normally sell them for. This is the Appaloosa alpaca. Look how white that come out from those dirty tip ends. So that's just ready now for me to card when I find a spare minute. You take time out from doing your business, so like social media, and just back off a bit and stop listing anything for the fortnight, and you still got loads more jobs to do when you get home. So there you go. So that's the Appaloosa alpaca, and it's still got that bit of shine, but it's so lovely and soft. So yeah, I'll be getting that carded up at some point and getting my hackle out and giving it a good tug around and getting that sorted. Also from the same farm that I got my mohair from at Owl Farms, she said that she had some Surrey alpaca, so I did the exact same process as what I did for the Appaloosa alpaca, a little bit hotter, and then I dyed the Surrey alpaca as well. So these are ready to go on the website. They're not perfect lock, but they're great for carding or for just using in your felting work. But different colours. I've got some pastel coloured ones I think over there, and then I've got these purpley storm colours as well. So there we go. So just to reiterate again, your temperature, your optimum temperature that you want for washing your fleece and dirty fleeces as well is 60 to 65 Celsius in the UK. If you use Fahrenheit, it's 140 to 150 Fahrenheit. That's generally what your boiler's set at anyway, is the temperature, your maximum temperature. Especially if you're using an economy boiler, you're advised not to really set it any more than that. It just makes your boiler work even harder. So roughly about 60 to 65. Hot water is needed to remove your lanolin and the grease from the wool, and keeping it at a constant warm temperature. I know I do mine a little bit different. If you had two buckets, that means that once you've let your wool sit in there for 20 minutes, the temperature's coming right down. Go and fill up your spare bucket with the hot water, and then transfer that one into your new bucket, and then empty out your other one. And you just want to keep that a constant temperature for as many rinses as needed, okay? You can use the Sunit method that I was on about earlier on. Alternatively, that's about it really. You can use, you can add on your last wash, instead of putting detergent in there, on your last rinse on your wool, stick in a tablespoon of white vinegar into it. It's something I've never used before, and a lot of people do use that tip in their wills. I'm not quite sure why they do it. I will have to look into it. I don't know, maybe experiment and see, does it make your fleece actually whiter? If anybody's ever used white vinegar in the end process of rinsing off your fleeces, let me know and tell me exactly why. I couldn't find any information into why somebody would use that, but I have read it in magazines, Fibre magazines. So yeah. And what about, so also, if you're looking for measurements of washing up liquid or detergent, don't use anything like baking soda in your water, because it'll just completely knacker up your fibre, okay? Don't use anything like that. It's not going to help, washing soda or anything like that, powder stuff. You've got to be careful. You want to try and find a detergent that's got a neutral pH balance as well, because some of them have really got quite high differentials in their pH balances. You have to be careful as well, because some companies or brands use a lot of different types of enzymes that can actually be a bit more destructive to your fleeces. So you want to find something that's a bit more ecologically friendly. I use Fairy at a push, but only because Phil brings them back from work. So if he's bringing it back from work and not getting the stuff that I would normally get when I go to the supermarket, which is the e-cover, because that's come down in price a heck of a lot now. So it doesn't pinch your pocket so much. And Fairy actually dries out my hands, so it's something I generally don't tend to like to use, but if he's bought it, you've got to use it. So yeah, so generally I like to buy the e-cover, and I'm not using it as a brand name, just more for the fact that there's not any harsh enzymes that are used in it. It's a water safety, environmentally safe detergent that is now on the market, and it's something that I generally do use. But you're looking at 10 mils or a third of an ounce of detergent to 100 grams or 3.5 ounce of wool, okay? So if you've got 200 grams of wool fleece, I mean, to be fair, I don't think I use that much in there. I literally use a good one squish in my washing up liquid bottle when I'm doing my wool fleeces. I wouldn't tend to use that amount, but then everybody's different, and you've got to take into account as well whether you live in an area that's got soft water or hard water. If you've got hard water, you're going to need that little bit more washing detergent in there when you're washing your fleece, because it doesn't sud up as well. If you've got a soft water area, then you're going to need less, because it'll end up all over the place, like using a twin tub and you're using the washing machine powder and not the twin tub powder. I've had this accident before when I used to have a twin tub a long time ago. If it's a really greasy fleece, add in, double up your quantity of detergent as well, or use the pot method like I used. Do it like that. Do that as your first wash for 20 minutes, and then put it into a hot sink ready with your detergent in there, and then you should only have to do 2 more washes after that, or even just 1 more wash and a really good water soak after that, okay? Now, they do say to avoid using anything like wool wash, like specifically designed for washing wools in your washing machine, because sometimes some companies use a lot more enzymes in there, and they say it can damage your fibres. They say not to use anything like shampoos or fabric conditioners. To be fair, I do. I use fabric conditioner, concentrated fabric conditioner, and I'll use 1/4 of the capful, and it just helps bring down, for me, I think it makes the fibre feel a lot softer. It's got a smell in it as well, which is nice, especially when you're dealing with mohair locks. They still whiff. They've still got a whiff to them. You can still smell animal in there, for definite. So there's a lot of people that are like, oh, I don't like the smell of sheep's wool. And you're like, right, okay, what can I do about it? And that's the reason why I use a fabric conditioner in my wools. And my bats always smell quite fragranced. And to be fair, I do notice that I don't get, I'm going to touch wood now, and I'm going to spell it out because I don't want to jinx myself, MOTH, okay? Because I use this a fabric conditioner that's got sandalwood in, and I actually do use sandalwood or essential oil in my room as well because they don't like it. But I find that if I've got wools that I've dyed up and I've used a fabric conditioner at the end of it, at the end of the process, like when I've been dyeing my rovings and things like that, and my silks and stuff, because it's got that fresh smell of conditioner, I think that's the thing that's stopping me from getting that problem in my studio. I live right now, I've got woodlands right behind to make a proper coppice. I've got beaches, I'm in the middle of the countryside. We do get a lot of moths here, but I haven't. And I'm not going to go any further on that one because I really don't want to jinx myself. So also you need to remember as well the effects, not just your hard water or soft water as well. You just need to experiment, okay? Take a little written note once you try out how much it's taking. You use a little measure for your washing up liquid and everything else, that sort of thing. If you want to go down that route, just till it becomes the norm to do it. Excuse the dog. But you need to remember as well, every sheep breed is different, depending on where you've got it, what the climate's been like that year, how dirty it's been. I mean, you might go to one breeder and his wool has been absolutely amazing one season, and then come the following year, it's not that great. It's not down to the farmer, it's not doing anything different, it's down to the environment and the way things are at the moment. We don't know what condition the fleece is going to be from one season to the next. So yeah, it's all, I mean, some fleeces are renowned for being really greasy. I've had swattable fleeces that the grease is literally dripping off it, and it's on my clothes and everything from the lanolin. So it all depends. And I've bought swattables from fleeces from another part of the country, not my own county, and they've not had half as much dripping grease off of them, lanolin off them. So it's all environmentally based. So don't judge every fleece by its first look. Just give it a little bit of work. You may need to do a couple more washes with it, but at the end of the day, have an experiment, enjoy it, try something new. Advise you, don't go for a fleece that's 4.5 kilos as your first ever fleece, because you'll be there forever washing it. And remember as well, if a fleece is really, really long, they're a bit long. It takes a bit more work as well when it comes to prepping it to spin the fibres. Try and stick with a fleece that's quite a short staple length, something like a Shetland, a Cheviot, what else? Welsh Mountain, Cambrian, Blue-faced Leicester, which is really nice. I mean, this is quite easy, nice. They're not massively long locks on a blue-faced Leicester, but these are lovely for spinning apart, for art spinning. But you can tease them apart, get them on a hackle, and spin them up that way on your drum carders once you've started to split them open and tease the locks open, okay? Yes, so I think that's about it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Catch me in a couple of weeks, so I'll be doing another spinning video, and I'm debating whether to start delving down to how to prep your bats. Now, there is a video on my timeline that's really, really quite popular on spinning bats, and I think I might start delving down there, and then I'll start thinking about going into the carding side of things and dyeing. But if there's any suggestions of what you'd like to see me start evolving into next, or any type of spin effects that you haven't done or tried yourself and you want me to have a go first, right? Drop them in the comments below. I do appreciate it if you would hit that like button. It helps my channel get discovered. Already I'm up to, I think, 536 followers since I announced that I was at 500. So it is helping my channel grow, and I really do appreciate it. Leaving comments down below as well helps it get discovered. So apart from that, take care of yourselves. I will see you next Wednesday for a live chat about 12:30 in the afternoon, British Standard Time, or GMT. I'll catch you there. Be good, be careful, and don't get caught. See you later and have fun.